Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about a bit of an update on something I discussed quite a while ago now. We're going to be talking about the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, also known as the Parkland shooting, that occurred in Florida in 2018 on February 14th. Basically, in my first video when I was talking about this topic, I was talking about how the shooter, Nicholas Cruz, was being romanticized by people on Tumblr and so on because, as we know, if there is any kind of criminal, there is going to be a community that is going to fetishize them, as we've seen. Just as a short recap, if you don't recall or if you don't know about this, at the time, the 19-year-old Cruz opened fire on students at the school. He ended up murdering 17 people and injuring 17 others. He basically then ran away, was arrested, and unsurprisingly, he had a pattern of disciplinary issues. We're going to talk a little bit more about all of that. This is just a very quick rundown in case you needed a reminder. There's an article that says, Nicholas Cruz's defense says his brain was poisoned by birth mother's addictions in death penalty trial. This was last updated on August 23rd, and the next article I'm going to read is going to be more recent, so I'm just kind of going through what's been happening relatively recently. An attorney for Cruz asked juries Monday to consider the Parkland school shooter's dysfunctional family life and his serious mental health issues when they decide whether to sentence him to death. In telling you Nick's story, in telling you the chapters of his life, we will give you reasons for life, Public Defender Melissa McNeil said Monday in a Florida courtroom. That is called mitigation. Mitigation is any reason that you believe that the death penalty is not an appropriate penalty in this case. Now, I do want to emphasize one thing right off the bat, just so you pay specific attention to it. The updates we're going to be talking about are heavily centered on family life, and obviously we'll get to more details, but family life is going to be a main theme that will repeat itself over and over, so just pay attention to that. In particular, McNeil highlighted his birth mother's abuse of drugs and alcohol during pregnancy. St. Cruz showed signs from a young age of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and antisocial personality disorder. Because Nicholas was bombarded by all of those things, he was poisoned in the womb. Because of that, his brain was irretrievably broken through no fault of his own, McNeil said. The comments were part of the defense's opening statements in Cruz's death penalty trial for the killing of 17 people and wounding of 17 more at a high school in Parkland, Florida in February of 2018. It was the first time jurors have heard from Cruz's defense. His attorneys deferred their initial opening statements, did not cross-examine any students or teachers who survived the shooting, and asked only basic questions of other witnesses. Cruz ended up pleading guilty. What the attorneys are asking for is for a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. So in terms of the defense, McNeil continued to say that he was a damaged and wounded person, and said attorneys plan to show the court disturbing things he said and wrote, his obsessions with guns and devils, and even his school shooting manifesto. His brain is broken, she said. He's a damaged human being, and that's why these things happen. McNeil also laid out Cruz's interaction with the public education system, which she said proved unable to address his issues. Cruz had developed mental delays early in his childhood, including his difficulty communicating with others. He would bite others, lash out emotionally, and was impaired intellectually, McNeil said. So like I said, there's a really big focus on Cruz's mother being an addict, which is seconded by Cruz's sister. The reason I'm highlighting the mother's use of drugs and alcohol is for the sole reason that here the point of contention is whether Cruz had fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So in response to this, because let's remember, this was back in August, as of October 4th, there's new information that's come out. Neuropsychologists testified Nicholas Cruz likely faked fetal alcohol syndrome symptoms. Prosecutors presented evidence that Parkland school shooter Nicholas Cruz's supposed symptoms of fetal alcohol syndrome were incompatible with the speed at which he committed the massacre. Now, to be clear, I'm obviously not a medical professional, so if I do give any opinions here, they're simply my opinions. They're not based in medicine. It's just based on what is being presented. Prosecutors spent several hours Tuesday trying to prove Florida school shooter Nicholas Cruz purposely did poorly on tests administered to see if he suffers from fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. The primary reason his attorneys say he murdered 17 people 4 years ago. But after presenting dozens of charts showing the results of IQ tests and other examinations and long explanations of averages and standard deviations that even had the judge joking she understood why some jurors were drinking strong Cuban coffee, Assistant Prosecutor Jeff Marcus pulled his trump card. He turned to the simplest test given to Cruz. How fast can the confessed killer tap his dominant left index finger? During tests administered early this year by experts his attorney hired, Cruz averaged 22 taps in 10 seconds. Prosecution neuropsychologist Robert Denny said the average male scores 51 on that test, and 22 would be a score only someone with severe brain injury that causes physical stiffness would tally. Marcus then played a cell phone video snippet from the February 14th, 2018 massacre at Parkland's Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School that recorded Cruz firing his AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle 20 times in 7 seconds. That included a 1-second pause. Each shot required a separate trigger pull. He then showed security video of Cruz smoothly turning and firing 2 shots into a coach who tried to stop him, and another of him quickly removing his gun's magazine and reloading a new one. A person who genuinely scored so poorly on the finger-tapping tests would not be able to pull the trigger like that, Denny said. Nor would he be able to fire and reload in one motion like he did. Now, if we're only looking at the evidence being presented here in terms of what is gauged as average, like the 51 taps, compared to the 22, obviously there is what looks like proof or evidence that effectively something may be wrong. I'm not going to say that he has any syndromes or anything like that. Obviously, we can't know what's being faked or not. That being said, I don't know how quickly symptoms can come on. Can things change between the shooting and now so that during the shooting he was able to shoot that quickly, whereas here the tapping was not possible? Cruz, 24, pleaded guilty a year ago to the murders of 14 students and 3 staff members. The trial will only decide whether he is sentenced to death or life without the possibility of parole. A unanimous vote by the 7-man, 5-woman jury is required for Cruz to get death. Anything less, and his sentence will be life. Lead prosecutor Mike Satz hopes Denny's testimony will rebut the defense's contention that heavy drinking by Cruz's mother during pregnancy put him on a lifelong path of bizarre and sometimes violent behavior that culminated in the shooting. The defense also tried to show that his adoptive mother, Linda Cruz, became overwhelmed after her husband died when Cruz was 5 and never got him complete treatment for his mental health issues. She died less than 3 months before the shootings. I definitely would say that pretty much anyone who decides to shoot up a school would have some kind of mental health issue. I don't think that is a reach in any means. I think an argument that's interesting to think about in this case as well is how much should the mother have done? How much was really known before these violent behaviors? How severe were they? And how indicative were they? Now, obviously, there's also an argument to be made about healthcare in the States and how expensive it is to get seen by a psychologist, a psychiatrist, to get the diagnosis, let alone get the medication, so on and so forth. That is a different discussion. The accessibility discussion is valid, but I'm not going to talk about it here because frankly, I am not the right person to discuss that. But I do think that we can say it's pretty commonly known that healthcare here is not particularly accessible. Denny, who does contract work for the federal prison system, testified Tuesday that he disagrees with the defense experts' contention that Cruz suffers from fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. The Missouri practitioner said the former Stoneman Douglas student's IQ scores of about 90 and the results of tests given him after the attack don't support that diagnosis. Mr. Cruz's scores are exactly what we would expect for a person who does not have any fetal alcohol problems, Denny said. So as of right now, there's no update because Denny is going to be cross-examined by Cruz's attorneys soon. After that, the prosecution is expected to finish its rebuttal case in the coming days with its closing arguments and deliberations scheduled for next week as of today, which is the 6th, and when you see this, the 7th. So I found this really interesting, mainly because I wasn't really expecting it to go in this direction, but then again, when the news really came out about the shooting and some information came out about the identity of the shooter, even though I feel like it's always been relatively little information, like I don't remember ever seeing much about it. I could have just missed it, but I just remember his name and not really much else being said. I don't know how much people are going to believe about the fetal alcohol disorder. I don't know if people are really going to buy that. The other question that comes to mind for me is I think it's possible for jurors to see, oh, there's a possibility that this affected him, but how seriously is that going to be taken in the sense of how much of this is also emotional because it involves the death of very young people, which automatically I think colors how someone sees it. No matter how allegedly unbiased someone is, I don't know what kind of person would just kind of not react to the death of young people at all. You guys can let me know what you think. I'm really curious to see how the jury responds to all of this, and I'm curious to see in what direction this goes. I think the timing of this is also what is making people suspicious because there has been time to look at, you know, what was going on in Cruz's life, what might have made him do this, which is coming out now, sure, But at the time, it doesn't seem like anything did come out. Now, obviously, there may have been a legal reason for that. They may have not just put it all together, although even now, I don't feel like we have a crazy amount of detail. So I think that definitely is not going to work in his favor at all. Anyway, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.